Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT07, and BT07 offers us lots of new and powerful cards to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today I'm going to be taking a look at the newest iteration of the Eosmon deck. So Eosmon did see a new version of the level 6 in BT07, adding some extra flexibility and viable options to how we could utilize our level 5 Eosmons. And it also makes a lot of our other Eosmons a little bit stronger and the deck more consistent because, well, we have more Eosmons to be playing around with. And the interesting thing about the deck is there's just a ton of different ways that you could build it, depending on what you want to support, just because Eosmon is playing a little bit differently than most of the other decks in the game. So you could feel free to utilize various sub-packages to play around with Eosmon and customize it to your likings. But the whole fact on what Eosmon is trying to do is just swarm with your level 5s and try to shut off the opponent's Tamers from unsuspending if they were suspended, with Menoa is looking to be pretty good in a hybrid and Tamer-based meta. So without further ado, onto the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitamas, unfortunately the way this deck is currently built, the Digitama slot doesn't really matter a whole lot, so you could kind of use whatever Digitamas you feel is best. I'm going to be using 4 copies of Tanemon as the main Digitama of the deck, just to try to help support our level 3s a little bit more. So what this card is doing is it has the nice inheritable ability of when attacking, if you Digivolve this turn, then this Digimon gains plus 1000 DP, so that way it makes our level 3s and subsequently any other Digimon, if we're actually Digivolving, a little bit stronger than they normally would be, making it a very solid Digitama to use. But again, the Digitama slots don't necessarily matter a whole lot, just because of how we're trying to play the deck. And as far as the 5th Digitama, if you even want to run a 5th Digitama, I'm just going to be using 1 copy of Argomon just for some additional memory gain. So it has the nice ability where during your turn, when this Digimon becomes unsuspended during your unsuspend phase, then you get to gain 1 memory, so that way you could try to have some additional memory to be working with to make more powerful plays happen. And then as far as the level 3s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Wormmon. So Wormmon is going to be a digger for the deck, except it's not an on-play digger, it's an on-delete digger. So that actually allows us to try to use our Digitamas and try to draw off of our Digitamas versus having lots of on-play cards. Then on top of that, it is looking at the top 3 cards of our deck, and add 1 level 4 or level 5 Digimon from among them into our hand, and the rest go to the bottom. So this just is trying to basically look for our Eosmons, so that way we could, well, get on the Eosmon train and continue the pressure on having lots of Eosmons to use off of their abilities. And then I'm going to be running 4 copies of Morphomon as the other level 3 in the deck, just because, well, Morphomon is doing almost the exact same thing as Wormmon, except it's a little bit more specific to the Eosmon deck. So it has the nice on-delete ability also, where we get to reveal the top 5 cards of our deck, add 1 Moana and 1 Digimon with Eosmon in its name from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So again, it's still fulfilling that digger role, just with the on-delete ability to be able to use our Digitamas. Next, on to the level 4s, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Beetlemon. So this could really be any other hybrid you want to be using, just because, well, a lot of the green hybrids just want to evo on top of your green Tamers, and we actually are going to be playing a green Tamer that we want to try to take advantage of. So what Beetlemon is doing is, yes, he could Digivolve on top of a green Tamer as if it was a level 3, but he also is trying to help dig out our other hybrids and our green Tamer. So he has the when Digivolving ability, where we get to reveal the top 5 cards of our deck and add 1 Digimon with hybrid in its form and 1 JP from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So he's just another digger in case we actually want to try to Digivolve up into him on top of our level 3s, or in combination with our green Tamer, making him a pretty decent card on the different ways that we could use him. And speaking of different ways to use our level 4s, next I'm going to be running 3 copies of MetalKabuterimon. So MetalKabuterimon is another hybrid Digimon, and this one has even more ways that we could use this card. So we could Digivolve it on top of a level 4 for 1, on top of a level 3 for 3, or on top of a green Tamer for 2. So just that level of flexibility on how we could evolve just increases its overall playability on what we could possibly do with it. And then it has a nice when Digivolving ability, where if this card has hybrid in its traits or a JP in its Digivolution source, then we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon with 6000 DP or less. So this is pretty good to try to be able to control and manipulate some of the opponent's field in some capacity, and that's what we're really trying to gain out of this type of a card, on top of the fact that it is another hybrid to synergize with the small hybrid package that we're going to be playing. And then the last level 4 of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Eosmon. So this is the level 4 Eosmon, and even though this is a white card, it could Digivolve for 2 off of our level 3s in case we want to try to Digivolve into it. But the on-play ability, it makes it so we actually just want to hard play it a little bit more often, but hard playing it might not be the best thing in the world, so we do have different ways on what we could do with it. But its on-play ability, if we do want to try to use it, states that we get to play 1 white tamer with a play cost of 4 or less from our hand for free. Then the opponent gets to play 1 tamer from their hand for free as well. So you might not necessarily want to give the opponent their tamer, especially with an increased amount of tamers running around, but if you know for a fact they're not playing a tamer-heavy deck, then this ability could be really good to help easily set up your tamers. And then on top of that, it has a nice inheritable ability, which is what you're wanting to use the card for more often than not, just because its when attacking ability states that we get to play 1 white tamer with a play cost of 4 or less from our hand for free, so it's almost like its on-play ability, except it's an inheritable when we're going to be attacking, so it's a little bit better. And then the bulk of the deck is going to go towards the only level 5 that we realistically need, which is going to be 14 copies of Eosmon. So this is the level 5 Eosmon, and we could run 14 copies because we could have up to 50 copies of this card into our deck. And then we want to run a whole bunch of this card just because its when attacking ability states that we get to play 1 level 5 or lower Eosmon from our hand for free. So this allows us to easily set up our level 4 if we really wanted to, and it also lets us set up all of our level 5s, so that way we could keep trying to draw into more level 5s, swing with our Eosmon, and then play more Eosmons off of our Eosmon. And then on top of that, it has a nice inheritable ability where this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP, which is never a bad thing, just because it makes our Eosmons a little bit stronger than they normally would be. And speaking of our level 6 Eosmons, next I'm going to be running 3 copies of the BT06 Eosmon. So this Eosmon is a little bit more expensive to Digivolve with, just because it could Digivolve for 5 off of white or green. So that, again, it kind of just wants us to play a little bit more into the green side, but the fact that it could Digivolve off of white is also pretty good, considering the only level 5 that we're going to be running is going to be the level 5 Eosmon. But the fact that this Digimon has some pretty solid stats, being at 13, makes it a little bit stronger than your average level 6. And then on top of that, what we're trying to do with this card is take advantage of how powerful this card can be. So its when Digivolving ability states that for each tamer you and your opponent have in play, so it is kind of punishing the opponent for having lots of tamers on their field, we get to place 1 level 5 or lower Eosmon from our trash on top of this card's Digivolution source in any order, and if 2 or more cards were placed this way, then we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon. So the whole idea is we're supposed to also try to fill up our trash with some Eosmons passively, so that way we could use the ability to just shove a whole bunch of Eosmons underneath, make this card super strong, and delete one of the opponent's Digimon. And then this card also wants to get lots of cards in its inheritable source because of its other ability, where during your turn, for every 3 cards in this Digimon's Digivolution source, it gains Security Attack +1. So the more inheritables that you have, because the more tamers that were on the field, the more powerful this card is going to be to try to burst and swing through a lot of the opponent's security, making it just a very solid card to use to try to pressure and deal lots of damage all at once. And then the last Digimon of the deck is going to be 3 copies of the brand new BT07 Eosmon. So this is a little bit of a cheaper card to use, evoing for 3 off of white and green. But it only has 11,000 DP, but that's okay because it has this nice ability where during your turn, all your other Eosmons get plus 1,000 DP, which is pretty good because it just makes all of our other Eosmons stronger, and we want to try to flood the field with our level 5. And with our level 5 being a little bit stronger, it's going to have a higher chance of living, so that way we could spawn more level 5s, and it just kind of keeps the ball rolling. And then on top of that, it has a nice on-delete ability, where we get to play a level 5 or lower Eosmon from our hand for free, so it's essentially replacing itself when it gets deleted, keeping a Digimon on the field to try to keep the pressure on as much as you can possibly let it. So this is just another really good Eosmon to kind of round out what Eosmon is trying to do. And then as far as the options go, I'm only going to be running 2 copies of win rate 60%. So win rate 60% is an absolutely fantastic option for this deck just because, well, it's already synergizing with our Tamers because it has the ability where if we have a Tamer in play, then we could use this option regardless of its color requirements. We don't necessarily care about that to begin with because it's a white option and, well, we're a primarily white-based deck, but it's nice to have just in case. And then on top of that, what we're really trying to do is utilize its main ability to be able to use our level 6 Eosmon, more specifically the BT06 one, a little bit more efficiently than we normally would. So it has the ability where the next time one of your Digimon digivolves, you get to trash one Digimon from your hand of the same color as the digivolving Digimon to reduce the memory cost of that Digivolution by 4. So this is really, really good because it's essentially minusing 2 to their evolution cost, making it so that way we could digivolve relatively easily and efficiently. But the main thing we want to try to do with this card is try to fill up our trash with our Eosmons, so that way we could have more Eosmons in our trash to pull from for our level 6 BT06 version, making it just a very good card to use, on top of the fact that it has a nice security ability of adding this card to our hand for whenever we're able to use this card and whenever we need to use this card. And then lastly, onto our Tamers, I'm going to be running 4 copies of JP. So JP is kind of tying together the green hybrid package that I'm going to be running, and this card is really good because it also has some decent synergy with Eosmon. So what we're trying to do with this card is statically on the field. It has the ability where during your turn, when this Tamer digivolves into a green Digimon, we get to reduce the memory cost of that evolution by 1, so it's easier to get up into our Tamers versus any of the other packages, so that way we could have easy and efficient evolutions. And then on top of that, what we're really trying to get out of this card is its inheritable ability of Piercing. So we're trying to use our hybrids to try to get up and evolve into our Eosmon, and when our Eosmon, especially our level 6, are going to be swinging, they're going to be swinging with Piercing. So again, this is super powerful in combination with the BT06 Eosmon because it could have lots of inheritable sources to deal lots of security damage with Piercing to basically make it very hard to stop, and the damage is borderline almost guaranteed to go through. So that's just what's making JP so good, is just giving that Piercing ability to our higher stages. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Menoa. So Menoa is the more Eosmon dedicated Tamer just because, well, it has lots of interactions with Eosmon because of its main ability. But this card is acting as our dedicated memory fixing Tamer, so that way we could always have our memory be hard set to 3 if it's anything less than 3. So that way we could make our plays more efficient than we normally would in case the opponent is trying to memory choke us. This just prevents that. On top of that, this also is going to be interacting with our Eosmons, trying to keep a constant flow of Eosmons in our hand. So its ability states that during your turn, when you play an Eosmon, you get to suspend this Tamer to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck and add 1 Tamer and 1 Digimon with Eosmon in its name among them into your hand and place the rest onto the bottom of your deck in any order. So this just is helping digging out our Eosmons. It's also helping digging out our Tamers, so that way we could play them more efficiently as well. And this card is really good at trying to shut off the opponent's Tamers, at least some of them, because of the other passive ability where during the opponent's turn, while you have an Eosmon in play, your opponent's Tamers don't unsuspend during their unsuspend phase, so if they are trying to use some of their Tamers to digivolve into hybrids, if it is suspended, then the hybrid would digivolve suspended, making them vulnerable to be attacked into. So all of that synergy is just making Menoa a very powerful Tamer for this deck to be running. And then the last Tamer and last card of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Analog Youth. So it is a very efficient Tamer to play, even though you're going to be playing this card for free half of the time. It doesn't necessarily matter because the on-play ability of revealing the top 3 cards, add 1 Digimon card among them into our hand, and the rest go to the trash, is super nice just because it helps with the overall consistency of the deck, and it helps try to fill up our trash with Eosmons for our BT06 Eosmon. And then on top of that, it has a nice secondary ability where during all turns, when one of your level 5 or higher Digimon with an inheritable source gets deleted, then we get to suspend this Tamer, and if we do, we get to gain a memory and hatch a Digi-Egg into an empty space in our raising area. So that secondary ability is a little bit more aggressive in terms of the hatching another Digi-Egg. so that way we could try to Digivolve on top of a level 3 and gain some more card draw that way. But what we're trying to use this secondary ability for is more the fact that it's punishing the opponent for our higher level Digimon getting deleted as long as they have an inheritable source. So it's a good de-incentivization tool on the opponent trying to delete our Digimon. And then, as I stated before, there's just a ton of other things that you could do with the deck. It's actually kind of interesting on what possibilities we have to be playing around with. So if you are going to try to support the green package a little bit more, we do have some very solid green cards that we could be using. So we do have Aargamana as a really solid level 3 to be using, just because if we are trying to Digivolve all the way up, the inheritable ability of giving our level 6 Security Attack Plus just allows our Eosmons to punch a little bit harder, which is pretty good, especially on the BT07 Eosmon, just because it's not necessarily the strongest of the Eosmons, and we do want to try to deal lots of damage rather consistently. Then on top of that, we also have the BT02 Green Agumon to be playing around with, just for a generic inheritable ability of giving our Digimon plus 1000 DP, so that way we can make better use of our level 4s, 5s, and 6s if, again, we're trying to Digivolve up normally. Then on top of that, we do have an anti-meta card in the form of Terriermon, just because Terriermon is going to be a memory blocker to stop the opponent's memory manipulating shenanigans on anything but their Tamers. Then we do have a whole bunch of other hybrids to be playing around with. MetalKabuterimon to basically Digivolve for 1 if we're trying to use a more tamer and hybrid-centric version, so that way we could try to Digivolve all the way up into our Eosmon rather efficiently, considering we're not necessarily trying to utilize its when attacking ability. Then we do have a whole bunch of really solid green option cards that suspend the opponent's Digimon down. We have Needle Spray, we have Flower Cannon, we have Blasted Disaster. There's just a whole bunch of really solid ways to try to suspend the opponent's Digimon down for green options. And then if you want to lean heavier into some more white options, we could run Cutting Edge. This is mostly going to be beneficial with our level 5 Eosmon, but we could use this in combination with our level 4 Eosmon as well to get basically a cascading of abilities to go off. And this is going to be one of the primary ways that the deck actually has to try to remove the opponent's mid to low level Digimon because of how this card works. And then if you want another tech card, then we also have Emergency Program Shutdown or Emergency Program Halt to try to stop the opponent from utilizing their options to stop them from deleting our Eosmon, so that way we could try to keep our Eosmon on the field. We could actually use this card a little bit more efficiently in this deck versus a lot of the other decks, just because we're already playing white cards, and this is a white option card. Then on top of that, we also have Bokomon as another white card to think about playing, where if you're going to be using a hybrid-based package, this is also another really fantastic card to try to dig out our hybrids, but what we're actually trying to utilize this card for is trying to dig out our Tamers, which is going to be one thing we really want to see, so that way we could try to play our Tamers as efficiently as we possibly can. And then if you are running hybrid-based packages, well, this is just a no-brainer just because it's a really good card to interact with our hybrids as well. And then as another really solid white tamer that you could think about it, we do have Takumi. So Takumi is another really efficient card to try to help draw us more cards and to act as a de-incentivization tool for the opponent's low-level Digimon attacking. Yes, it does affect our low-level Digimon, but again, you could build the deck to not even incorporate level 3s if you really don't want to, so we could actually make better use of this Takumi where it's less of a downside for that secondary ability. But you mostly want to use this card for its draw power, just because we could Digivolve a little bit more often and a little bit more consistently in this version of the deck than previous before, making better use of Takumi as a whole. And then if you do want to run, again, more anti-meta cards and more anti-meta tech, we even do have a level 7 that we could think about running in the form of Armageddon, just because it could Digivolve off of white level 6s. Most of the time you don't really want to Digivolve off of your white level 6s, but if you're afraid of the opponent's level 7 Digimon, then you could use this card to try to shut off the opponent's when Digivolving abilities of their level 7s, making it so their level 7s aren't necessarily that big of a threat outside of them having a big body. And then to round out what green can do to help Eosmon and what Eosmon's trying to do, we do have the Argomon level 6 from BT05 to play around with, just because we could use the Digisorption ability to easily get up into this card, and then we want to get up into this card because it helps Moenic to try to keep the opponent's Tamers locked down, and is one of the few ways that we actually have to suspend the opponent's Tamers down currently in the game. So this is another really good anti-meta card to think about building around if you want to shift the deck more into a traditional evolution style of deck and actually try to incorporate green level 5 Digimon. And then, as I stated before, there's just so many sub-packages and hybrid packages that we could be playing around with. It's kind of astonishing, just because the hybrid packages actually give some extra flexibility and customization to what Eosmon can do, and there's no real downside to wanting to run it because of how Eosmon is functioning. So we could run a purple package and run cards like Schwartz Lizard to be able to utilize our Tamers to have some additional removal for what the deck is trying to do, just because the deck does have a little bit of a lack of removal, so we could shore up that weakness with cards like this. And the purple package is also really good at trying to help fill up our trash, so that way when we digivolve into our level 6 Eosmon from BT06, if you want to focus a little bit more on that one, then we could try to capitalize on that ability even better. And then you could think about running a nice little yellow package, just because we actually do have lots of synergy with what we could possibly do with yellow. So the big thing is, like I stated before, the deck does kind of have a lack of removal, so we could use yellow to have access to lots of different forms of DP reduction to act as our form of removal for what the deck is trying to do. Then on top of that, we also have what the yellow hybrids are trying to do, which is interact with boosting our own security, and we do have various other tech and tools to help boost our own security Digimon's DP, and with the guaranteed fact that we know that we're running lots of level 5 Eosmon, we could try to make them even stronger in our security than they normally would be, making our security a lot more threatening as well, all thanks to just, again, what the yellow package and what yellow hybrids could offer for the deck. And then we even have some really solid red hybrids and red cards to help dig out our Tamers to be playing with, just because, again, we still are somewhat of a Tamer-focused deck, just because we want to dig out our Tamers to be able to play them more efficiently off of Menoa, and red does have one of the best ways of trying to dig out Tamers generically, on top of the fact that the red package could also just help boost our DP, boost our damage output, and do various other things that the deck kind of also is lacking, on top of the fact that red also still has some really solid removal cards if we want to lean heavier into those as well, making red a really solid sub-package to think about playing with as well. And then we could even think about using blue as probably one of the other sub-packages in terms of hybrid support and Tamer diggers that we have. So blue is a little bit more aggressive of a color. It doesn't necessarily have as good as removal options, but the blue hybrids are rather expansive, and we do have lots of different ways to try to stunlock the opponent's Digimon with blue, so that way we could easily and try to safely aggress with some of our Digimon. So it's not like the blue package is going to be completely bad to run, it's just another option and alternative that we can run, just because it does have some very similar tools to what red's trying to do. But for the most part, this is just what Eosmon is doing. It's not really doing anything too different, it's just trying to adopt a whole bunch of different tools to try to make playing Eosmon and your Eosmons as a whole even more powerful than it has been before. And as I stated, there's just a ton of different sub-packages and a ton of different ways to build the deck to really help flesh out all of the possibilities that we could do with Eosmon, making it a very interesting and very fun deck to be playing around with, not only just from a gameplay perspective, because it's a little bit different than most of the other decks, but from a deck building perspective, because all of the depth that we could do in terms of the different sub-packages we could run. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.